The Daily Code Snippet. So now we have gone through the code and found all the instances of those two colors, the A6, 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 and changed it to 575757, and also added this E81C23 instead of ED1C24 for the red. And now that we've cleared the cache and turned on the Chrome extension again, the Web Access Pro, to check our site for errors, we notice now that we no longer have contrast color errors coming up. So we've managed to fix the site from the color contrast standpoint. And so if we look at the site now, you can see that this is a bit darker than it was before, as well as this. But what we have lost is the difference between the headers and these information, because they're too close now in gray to show a difference. So one thing we may want to do now is change those header colors from that dark gray color into black. And that way we retain some contrast between the regular text and these headers, which is now lost because we've made the regular color much darker in gray to be enough color contrast. So this is where kind of design sometimes meets issues with making your site accessible, because we liked the light gray in terms of its contrast with our headers that were in a dark gray. But now, because we've made that light gray a darker gray, there is no longer the visual contrast that we had before in our design. And so this is why sometimes making things accessible, we do run into difficulties with our design, because the design that we want to use, we can't, because the colors we're choosing are things that don't have enough color contrast. So these are the trade-offs when you're trying to create accessibility and making our designs open to more people. We will have to adjust the look and feel of our site in some ways. And this is where you may run into issues with your client if they were married, very strongly to that light gray color. They may object to making the change. But in order to be compliant, we need to actually use a darker gray that provides enough color contrast for our viewers that may have low vision issues. So what we might want to do is go back to our code and then go look for our instances of our headers and see if we can change that color to something darker that may provide more contrast. So that would be this color 333, which is a darker gray. We see here there's also repetition. I noticed that when I was editing that there was some repetition of color that didn't need to be there. So I've been also cleaning up the code in that sense. So now if we go back to our find tool and instead search for 333, we can then change that to black. And what I'm going to do is replace all of the 333 with black. And the instances where we were missing things before was because, again, it's very to the letter when I search. So I was searching for 333 with a semicolon after and replacing it. But I was missing instances where it was hashtag 333 without a semicolon. But what I was finding is this is a duplicate. And so it's fine that I didn't change it. I'm going to actually go through and try to delete those instances of duplicate code that are unnecessary. So we'll go ahead and look for that. So if we go through our code slowly, we will look for 333. If there's a duplicate, we will take care of it. We can also try searching for 333 without, if it becomes, the fact that it can't find it means that it doesn't exist, so that's good. So we've saved this code, and then we can do the same thing with our project CSS and see if we can find any instances, but we don't see that. So we don't have any instances to change. We'll look just in case. Yeah, so we aren't seeing any of that. But we do see there's still a couple instances of duplicate code. So whenever I see that, I'm going to clean that up. And we kind of go through our code a bit slowly so we can find the instances that we're trying to correct. And we don't see anything. So now let's go back to our website. And we're going to clear our cache again. And refresh. So we've made it black to gray, and there's still not the same level of difference that we had when we had dark gray to light gray. So it still may not be something that is enough of a change. We will have to discuss, this change with the client if it's enough. They may want to add weight to the type, maybe make it the next step up in weight to give it more gravitas. And we will find out, what is preferred in this case. And if we go to our individual clients pages, we see that it's using that same contrast. We also may want to refresh our icons as well. So you can see that the icons are still of the lighter gray color. And because these are actually brought in as images, we would have to actually go back to the image and adjust the image itself to make it darker. So that's another task in terms of color contrast. But graphical elements are not the same as text in terms of color contrast, so they aren't seeming to come up with an error on that. So we will double check, but we may want to make it more consistent in design. We're going to have to edit some of the icons that we're using that are still using that lighter gray and make it a darker gray. And afterwards, we will look at what other errors are coming up and seeing if there is something we can do to fix our code to, again, fix some of these issues that are still coming up that aren't a color contrast issue, but are other problems with the site in terms of accessibility. And it looks like a main error is to look at the use of duplicate IDs and to look at maybe ARIA marking of regions and landmarks, whether they're not that clear for someone using an assistive device, and fix that. So we're going to go through, so you would have an idea how you would go about fixing the code of a site that is currently not accessible and making it accessible, and using this tool, this Web Access Pro that we have created to help you identify issues with your site. So now you have an idea on how to remediate a website for contrast errors using the tool Web Access Pro, which is a Chrome extension under development. If you want more information, click on the link below. Presented by Designers Learn Code.